this wall, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to use in general is Baldwin Street. This wall in the briefing room is going to in general be the houses, to include roughly 509, 511, and 513 South Baldwin Street. As we continue to orient ourselves, directionally speaking, this way would be the intersection of Jennifer Street and South Baldwin, and that behind Detective Reister, who is again acting as though she is Officer Heimsness, would be the general direction of Baldwin and Spate Street. Is that, are we spatially accurate?
That's correct.
Okay.
You ready? We're
In the frame.
okay. You know I could have called the cops.
You want to get weird?
Okay?
Okay.
So by me looking over the shoulder is what Kevin said he did when he observed Officer Heimsness for the first time.
And I didn't grab your arms at that time, but
You want to do it one more time?
sure.
Okay.
I could have called the cops.
You want to get weird?
Does that feel pretty accurate? I know. Again, you articulated earlier before we went live on the recording that it's hard to estimate force.
Right.
But
I think
as
that-
best you can from what you observed.
Yes.
Okay.
Somewhere between that first take and that second take, yes.
Okay. So then the second segment that we'll replay is after Kevin has broken off from Paul. So again, Kevin would be at the terrace with his back to the street of Baldwin Street, and that he would ultimately move around to his driveway. Do you think it's important for us to build an actor into that which would represent you, or can we just have it be you being Paul again and Detective Reister being Officer Heimsness?
It might be helpful for that, actually,
Okay.
for me. Yeah.
Okay. You want me to do that?
Are you comfortable with
Yes,
this?
absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. So I will then stand in this frame of view and be, again, Kevin, after Kevin has broken off from Paul, standing at the terrace, looking generally speaking towards the houses.
So you would have let go of me,
Okay.
and when the officer said, get down,
Okay. I spin back to the terrace.
Get down, get down.
you would have, the get down came before,
Okay.
well, 1 second. Get down came as he was walking up when you let go, or when I let go.
Put people in position.
Yeah, position.
Do we want to refer to our map, what positions we used on our map?
I think we just showed the physical,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
physical engagement. I think we
Okay.
went over pretty clearly, and I don't want to get hung up on exactly what point someone was at when they said get down. You know what I mean? What I really want to capture is the physical
Right.
nature.
So, you've let go of me as Paul, and you're coming towards me, and I shift my attention from you to the officer, and I go like this. That's where the physical contact took place.
Okay.
And I don't know that we moved as far as we moved before, just now.
Okay.
So Detective Reister should maybe not back up as much?
Right. So,
Okay.
maybe about here.
Okay.
Please use
We'll do it
the
again.
amount of force that you think.
Okay. So, you let go of me. Like that.
Okay.
And at that point, after seeing the beginning of that, and this is an important point, that's when I started to move. After seeing the beginning of this, that's when I started to move.
Okay.
I saw part of this as I moved around the officer and Paul Heenan. And then the next place I stopped was in our driveway, and saw at that point more or less the same movements going on for probably a period of 4 to 5 seconds. And that's when I saw the officer then stand up,
Step back with,
take a step back, and get into a shooting stance. And at the same time as that happened, Paul do a similar movement, step back. I saw Paul's eyes at this point from about where you are. It was about a 5 to 6 foot space between the officer and Paul, by my estimation. It was at that time when I noticed the second police officer, who was about here. And so, as I've described, it's a triangle between the 2 police officers and Paul. If you had me in the mix, the 4 of us made a cross shape.
Sure.
When, as the police officers stood up, and as Paul did, that's when the separation seemed to occur. I saw Paul's eyes, as I said, and when immediately before the police officer shot, it seemed like Paul was moving down into a position like this. When he was shot, he seemed to fall this way, and as I've said, it seemed like he fell in pain and fell almost into a fetal position with his face.
Feel free to demonstrate if you will.
I cracked my head on the desk, so. He went like this,
so
was shot 3 times.
bang, bang, bang.
Fell like this, and then I believe he sort of slowly rolled over onto his back. At that point, as I disengaged with Paul, I was yelling, "He's my neighbor, he's a neighbor," multiple times. But from when I disengaged and continued to, and saw him continue towards the police officer, to when I stopped in the driveway. After I saw the shots, as I've stated, yelled "Jesus Christ" a couple times, "God damn it," at least once, and then moved up the driveway, up onto our porch and into our house. Prior to, as I was moving up the driveway, I heard the police officer who shot Paul look at and say to the other police officer, "He went for my gun."
Okay.
Keep it recording.
Is there anything else that you would like, that you think that you haven't shared with us today, either in the interview room or in this room here, that you think is important? I know we've been here a long time. It's
You know, you asked me that same question before we left the other room, and I gave you a couple points there, which I know have been captured. I think that's it.
Did we capture in the other interview room the question about whether or not any more observation of an
No.
injury? Okay. One thing that we also wanted to sort of talk or discuss with you was, that morning we identified a possible abrasion or mark on your arm. You had actually explained at one point, again, I think you identified 2 different marks that you observed that you think
Well,
were like.
the investigator, Officer
Yep.
Barr, I believe.
Yep.
Was the one who looked at my arm and said, "Was that there before? Was that there before?" And I said, "I don't know, I'm not sure." He took a DNA swab
Yep.
of my arm.
Yep.
But here's
Okay.
my arm.
So in general, you haven't had any new bruising or
No.
new injuries like that? You also, if you will, as we were waiting for the videotape to come here, one of the things that we talked about was describing how hard Paul grabbed you by your wrists. And if I want to go on record, but I want to be accurate. I thought you described it as being like a snake bite in the sense that the amount of force that was used?
That's what Jake said.
Okay.
The only way I can describe it is if someone were to grab your arm, if you had your arm clenched on something, they grabbed your arm, and you felt it for the next 10 to 15 minutes, not in pain, but just that general feeling of this arm has been grabbed, that's the force.
Okay.
I only felt it on my right arm. I didn't feel that on my left arm.
If you will, we also thought we would have you sign and date this drawing.
Sure.
It's November 16th. You can pick anywhere. Thank you. And I'm just generally speaking noting that he's signing it at about 5:28 PM. You keep going. We'll stay alive here.
Yeah, I don't know. It's up to you, I mean.
Okay. Did you, they were asking you if you had anything you wanted to say. When we talked earlier, you were expressing your view about whether you were threatened or fearful.
And I think it's with the arm thing, and I think it's the fact that I was turning to call for help. I wouldn't turn to call for help if I felt like a punch was going to be thrown. I didn't feel like that's where this was going. I wasn't fearful of it. I didn't feel in complete danger. I felt like.
What would it take you to feel in danger then, though?
Someone throwing a punch at me, someone trying to tackle me, somebody kicking me, somebody elbowing me in the face and then running towards my house, moving a lot quicker than how we were moving, not willfully being part of the movement in the form of a back pedal. A lot of factors would have made me feel more in fear of
One thing you articulated to me that morning was that you were thinking, how am I going to get out of this?
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
That is accurate. And I remember looking down at his leg and thinking, can I sweep his leg and throw him down? And I decided I couldn't. But yeah, it was one of those thoughts, how am I going to get out of this?
And is it also fair to say that you were thinking that you did need some help?
Yes, that's
Okay.
that's why I turned my head. What I was picturing help to be was more diffusing the situation, helping to reverse the situation, acknowledging that this was a neighbor who was in need of help back into his home, and hoping, either my wife or another neighbor could assist with that.
Okay.
So.
I understand.
Anything else?